The 2019 NBA draft features some amazing talent, but there's no such thing as a perfect prospect. So in today's video, we'll be looking at the biggest problem for each of the top prospects in the upcoming draft. So if you guys like my content, make sure you like and subscribe. The support lately has been absolutely blowing my mind, so let's keep it up and get 14 likes on today's video, and let's hop right into it. Now, I want to make this clear, just because there is a concern with a prospect doesn't mean they aren't a great prospect or shouldn't be a top selection in this draft, as in the future these concerns could be completely washed away or a whole new set of concerns could emerge once they touch the NBA hardwood. But we're going to start it off with one of the most polarizing prospects in the draft, Ja Morant. Ja Morant flew up the board in his sophomore season and became a household name after an amazing March Madness performance. Ja Morant is a tough prospect to critique, as in the public eye, he's a god-tier point guard with amazing athleticism, a knockdown shooter, and a triple-double machine, as in the 2 games on the national stage, he managed to get 22.5 points, 10 assists, 8 rebounds, shooting 7 for 8 from 3. Now, these numbers aren't too far away from what Ja did this season, but his extremely efficient three-point shooting in the tournament has given everyone a false representation of Ja Morant as a prospect. While his season-long 36% from 3 looks great, when you look closer, without the tournament included, it goes down to 34%, and if you take out his 2 best three-point shooting games this season, it goes down to less than 31% from 3. We also never saw Morant be a consistent three-point threat before this season, as in his freshman year, he only shot 30% from 3. Now, I know this looks like a stretch, but I'm not trying to make the point that he can't shoot, rather that he's just a much more inconsistent shooter than a lot of people realize. Morant is still an amazing prospect. We know about the athleticism, we know about that playmaking ability, but just like everyone in this draft, he's not the perfect prospect. He doesn't have the perfect frame. His assist to turnover ratio is nothing to get excited about, and we shouldn't be expecting him to be a prolific three-point shooter to begin his NBA career. Next, we got DeAndre Hunter. Now, there's no obvious flaw for Hunter. He's coming in with great size, great length. He's an incredible defender and played with a remarkable efficiency this season. The only real question with Hunter is just how much star potential does he have. Because Ty Jerome and Kyle Guy deservingly had most of the ball handling responsibilities, DeAndre Hunter became more of a beneficiary of Virginia's offense rather than someone given the ball in an isolation setting. We know Hunter is a solid spot-up shooter, and with his athleticism is effective going at the rim, but just how refined of an offensive skill set does he have, and does he have the upside to deserve a top 5 selection? Now, personally, this wouldn't shy me away from taking a great prospect like Hunter, but I definitely think his individual team workouts will be very important for him, as he can show off his full skill set that we really didn't get a great chance to see at Virginia this year. Next, we got Darius Garland, who has a pretty interesting situation. Right now, it's very unclear where he's going to be going in this draft. Some mocks have him going with the 4th overall pick to the Los Angeles Lakers, while others have him as the 3rd point guard off the board. Some of this unclear draft stock can be attributed to the small sample size we have due to a meniscus injury he suffered just 5 games into the season. So the biggest concern with Garland has to be the small sample size, because when he was on the court, it was absolutely incredible. In the 4 games, he managed to get 16 points per game on a remarkable 54% from the field and 75% from 3, and this is including an off game against Alcorn State, where he shot 1 for 6 from the field and 0 for 3 from 3, and finished with just 3 points. Garland showed his incredible scoring ability, especially shooting off the dribble, which is why he's become a top prospect in this draft. Now, it doesn't appear Garland is going to be anything special on the defensive end, but I think teams are well aware of that when taking him, and the knee injury that set back Garland's freshman season doesn't appear to have long-term implications, so we are left to determine his value based on just 4 out-of-conference games. Next, we got Barrett, and his concerns aren't really that hard to find, as it's been really widely reported, and that's going to be his struggles from 3-point range and tunnel vision this season. It's well known that going into this season, he was the projected #1 overall pick. Now, that's definitely not the case, partly due to the rising stock of players such as Zion Williamson, and part due to some of RJ's biggest flaws becoming very evident this season. Barrett wasn't nearly the 3-point threat we expected, as he shot less than 31% from 3, and heading into the NBA as a possible 3rd overall pick, this is a big concern and cannot be ignored. Despite not going down at an efficient rate, RJ didn't shy away from throwing up threes, as he took over 6 a game, and had multiple games that had us scratching our head, such as his 4 for 17 from 3 performance against Syracuse, and 0 for 7 game in the Sweet 16 against Virginia Tech. Barrett has also proven to be a solid playmaker for his position this season, but at times, it can be overshadowed by his tunnel vision, as consistently, it looks like RJ has already made his decision for that possession before the ball even crosses half court. Now, these are definitely both concerns, but this doesn't mean RJ should not be a top pick in this draft. His size, athleticism, and finishing ability is enough to get excited about his potential going to the NBA. Next, we're going to look at the top big man prospect, and that's going to be Jackson Hayes. Hayes' biggest concern just has to be how raw of a prospect he is. His shot blocking ability is the obvious draw, as he averaged 2.2 blocks a game in only 23 minutes of play. His athleticism is there, and the team that drafts him is hoping to find the next modern day big who can run the pick and roll, finish above the rim, and be that shot blocking threat on the other end. But we were talking about someone who barely played in his junior season of high school, and has a lot more to go before becoming that defensive impact we are hoping for. Next, we got Zion Williamson. Zion is the consensus #1 overall selection in the upcoming draft, but despite having generational athleticism and amazing production, he doesn't go without concern, the most obvious one for Zion being his frame, as he's coming in at 6'7", 285 pounds, yes, 285 pounds. That makes him the second heaviest player in the whole entire NBA. The only player heavier being 7'3" Boban Marjanovic. Yes, you heard that right. The only player in the whole entire NBA that's heavier is 7'3". Now, this is an obvious concern in terms of his stamina, career longevity, and injury risk, but so far it hasn't stopped Zion from tearing up the college hardwood, and he attributes a lot of his athleticism and 40+ inch vertical to this massive weight. Assuming that Zion is playing the power forward position, he's also coming in with not ideal height at 6'7". We have seen several players in the past have success at this position in size, like we talked about in the recent video, and we still see some today, such as Draymond Green and Montrezl Harrell, but it's not very common. Now, his height doesn't really concern me, but just how physically dominant he is and his ability to jump out the gym. The last concern for Zion has to be that 3-point scoring ability. Even if Zion has a lot of success in the NBA, we've seen the lack of a 3-point shot really hold players back from greatness in the modern NBA, such as Ben Simmons and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now, on paper, it looks like Zion is a solid 3-point shooter, as he shot better than both his teammates Cam Reddish and RJ Barrett with 34% from 3, but keep in mind, this is only on 2 attempts, and it wasn't consistent nor a major threat for him this season, and we shouldn't expect it to be a big part of his game going into the NBA. Now, with all this said, I need to make this most clear for Zion rather than any other prospect. Despite these concerns, Zion deserves to be that #1 overall selection in the 2019 NBA draft. The combination of generational athleticism and dominant production cannot be ignored, and the Pelicans should be no less than ecstatic to grab him at #1. Next, we got Culver, who solidified himself as a top 10 selection in this draft with tenacious defense and solid offensive production, as this year he averaged over 18 points per game at Texas Tech. Now, Culver's concern, like a lot of top prospects in this draft, is just going to be his consistency beyond the arc. This draft definitely doesn't have those obvious 3-point threats like we've seen in recent years, but luckily for Culver, we have a 2-year sample size that alleviates a lot of concern. This year, Culver only shot 30% from 3, but in his freshman season, on practically identical volume, he shot an amazing 38% from 3. This could partly be attributed to his much more ball-dominant role we saw this season, and I honestly feel if he had a role more comparable to a guy like DeAndre Hunter, he would have had a much more efficient season. So as far as stats not telling the whole story, I think Culver is a great example of that. Next, we got Cam Reddish. He has a really weird situation, as he really didn't have the production to deserve a top 10 selection in this draft, as he only shot 36% from the field and 33% from 3. So the concern for him, obviously, is going to be a lack of production, because as far as everything else goes, he's a dream of a prospect. He's 6'8", over a 7-foot wingspan with a smooth shooting stroke and the coordination to be a lethal scorer. It's definitely odd to have someone with this little production possibly be a top 5 pick in this draft, but the potential is just too much to be ignored. Next, we have Bol, and this was definitely the most obvious, as without it, he's a consensus top 10 selection in the draft, possibly top 5, and that's going to be his health. Before going down with an injury, even with several concerns, his production was way too much to ignore, and he was going at the top of the draft on almost every single mock. But once suffering the foot injury, Bol's stock absolutely plummeted, and that's clearly the main concern for teams looking to possibly take a risk on him in the draft. Now, this is on top of an already concerning frame. Bol has the size at 7'2", but measured at the combine at just 208 pounds. There isn't really a ceiling for Bol, but there is definitely a lot of risk associated. Next, we got Coby White, who took a hit at the combine in my eyes, as I like the potential for versatility as a starter and off the bench to play both the 1 and 2, but measuring in with a 6'5" wingspan that matches his height kind of limits him to the 1, where I don't think he's really proven himself as someone who can run the offense. But even with that being said, his shooting and overall scoring potential is enough for him to be a deserving top 10 selection in this draft, but I personally believe he should be the 3rd point guard taken off the board. Lastly, we have Brandon Clark, and this one has to be pretty simple, and that's just going to be his size. He proved his ability to be an amazing defender, averaging over 3 blocks and a steal a game, plus scored with a remarkable efficiency at the rim. Athletically, he amazed at the combine, put up some of the best numbers, especially out of the big man, but measuring in at 6'8" with a wingspan that matches it is definitely concerning for a prospect whose draw is centered around his defense. That's it for you guys. You guys tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I thought this would be a pretty fun video, because with all these draft videos you see all on YouTube, on ESPN and everything, everyone is focusing on the great things about these prospects, the athleticism about this guy, the shooting of that guy, but sometimes you gotta go deeper, you gotta look at a lot of concerns, so that's what we did in today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and the shoutouts are gonna be Thomas Rendon, Caden Samler, Frederick Atkins, YBBJ, and Joshua. If you guys want to shout out in the next video, all you gotta do is like the video, comment liked, and I'll shout 5 of you guys out. With all that being said, I hope you guys have a great day, and peace.